Hello, welcome to Granada Reports, live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello, thanks for joining us on the programme this evening.
Shot in her school uniform, a 15-year-old girl suffers terrible injuries after being hit as she waited for a bus in Liverpool.
She stood in a bus stop in her school uniform, returning home from her day at school, preparing for her GCSEs, and she's entirely innocent in this.
The teacher from St Helens ready to fight the Russians in Ukraine, even if it means he may never see his wife and 2-year-old son again.
I've told him I love him maybe 100 times in the last few days, but he doesn't know what's going on.
We also hear about the heartwarming response to appeals for help for people in Ukraine.
And it's been another damp day. Any signs of spring ahead? The forecast is coming up.
Yes, but first, detectives say it is a miracle that a 15-year-old girl survived after she was shot while she waited to catch a bus home from school in Liverpool.
She was still in her school uniform when an ambulance was rushing her to hospital in a critical condition at about this time last night.
Police are looking for a number of people who were dressed in dark clothing and balaclavas.
Our reporter Victoria Grimes is in our Liverpool studio for us tonight. A terrible thing to happen, Vicky. What more do we know about it?
Lucy, this is absolutely a shocking event which has stunned people here. We know that it happened in the Stockport area of the city last night, and I think residents are just shocked and appalled that something like this could happen to a teenage girl who's just standing waiting for her bus home from school. Now, emergency services were called to Upper Warwick Street just after 5 o'clock last night, where they found the girl with what they've described as catastrophic injuries, and she was, of course, taken to hospital. Now, a short time later, a 21-year-old man attended a hospital with a gunshot wound to his arm. Police say that they are dealing with a number of lines of inquiry at the moment, and one of those is whether or not these two incidents could be linked. Now, that 15-year-old girl remains in hospital this evening. Her condition is described as serious but stable. She and her family are being supported by specially trained officers, but I think it's fair to say that this is a case that's shocked the police as much as it has people who live in Liverpool and the surrounding areas. One officer today, he was the head of crime for Merseyside Police, was speaking at a press conference, and he said that in his 29 years of the force, this is one of his most appalling things that he's seen.
This is an attack on a 15-year-old girl who is in the right place at the right time, exactly where she should be. She stood in a bus stop in her school uniform, returning home from her day at school, preparing for her GCSEs, and she's entirely innocent in this. What we found is we've got a group of individuals who have absolutely no regard for our community's safety, other members of the public and young girls stood in bus stops, and they have taken it upon themselves to use firearms on our streets, either against each other or one towards another group, and this has resulted in one of those rounds striking this girl in her body, causing catastrophic injuries, and she's lucky. It's a real miracle that she's managed to survive this.
And Vicky, this is an investigation. It's still in its early stages.
Yeah, that's right, Andy. Well, police have told us today that a 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and possession of a firearm, and a 60-year-old man from Stockport has been arrested on suspicion of assisting offender. Now, police say that they are very, very keen to hear. In fact, they really want people to get in touch if they've got any information. You know, this was a busy road. It was at rush hour last night. Somebody must have seen something. They're particularly keen to hear from anyone who may have seen those people dressed in black with their faces covered on what they believe to be electric bikes. Anyone with dash cam footage, mobile phone footage, then they really want them to come forward so that they can bring this case to a conclusion. It's just so sad and utterly tragic that this is another blow for Liverpool just a few months after the very sad death of 12-year-old Ava White, who was stabbed whilst she was watching the Christmas lights switch on back in November. And what police have made very, very clear today is that they will not tolerate violence of this sort on our streets, and they say they're determined to bring those responsible to justice.
Absolutely. OK, Vicky in Liverpool, thank you.
On to other news tonight, and while the mass exodus from Ukraine goes on, a teacher from St Helens has travelled the other way into the war zone to be reunited with his wife and 2-year-old son.
And Ian Umney says as Russian attacks escalate, he is prepared to join the fight by the Ukrainian resistance, even though it's against overwhelming odds.
He spoke to our correspondent, Elaine Wilcox.
They opened the door and my son reached his arms out to me, and I hugged him and I wept into my wife's shoulder and gave them both a big kiss.
As thousands head out of Ukraine, a former teacher from St Helens has gone back to try to get his wife and son to the border, but he plans to stay.
You're a teacher without any military experience. Doesn't this terrify you?
The only thing that scares me is knowing my son won't have a father when he grows up. It's a last-minute thing for me to do, to go and join and bear arms, but I'm willing to do it if I need to.
Overnight, Putin's relentless bombardment ramped up again, with more than 2,000 civilian casualties caught up in the indiscriminate bombing. At Liverpool's parish church, today's Ash Wednesday service was dedicated to the people of Ukraine after a call from the Pope for fasting and prayers for the innocents in war.
We follow the call of Pope Francis that the world should unite today in prayer for the region, for peace, offering their support to the people of Ukraine.
My hope is that peace will come soon. I think the fear for all of us is that this could be terribly protracted. One death is one death too many. It's a scandal.
A feeling of helplessness has brought people together. Last night, hundreds gathered in Liverpool's bombed-out church.
And all the citizens of the world who are trying to flee Ukraine right now, black, white, brown.
I'm from Ireland and I live in the world, and I just wanted to show some support.
And we think it's important that that's felt across the world.
As Russia's advance continues from all corners of the country, Ian Umney fears Nikopol, where his family are, will be next in the firing line as he tries to get an evacuation flight for his wife and son to the UK.
And what do you say to your 2-year-old son about leaving him again?
I've told him I love him maybe 100 times in the last 2 days, but he doesn't know what's going on, and it's just everyday normal life for him, which I'm glad for.
They have an increasingly perilous journey to safety as more of Ukraine falls into Russia's hands. Elaine Wilcox, ITV News.
Well, as we've been reporting this week, our region's Polish community has really stepped up to help Ukrainians fleeing the invasion.
Yeah, the response is really heartwarming. At one church in Preston, lots of supplies are being stockpiled before they're being shipped out, and Elaine is at that church for us tonight.
Well, this is what humanity looks like. We've got boxes of clothes, food and medicine organised here in this Santa Maria Goretti Polish church in Preston. Natalia, you and your husband have done this. You're from Poland. Tell us who's been donating.
So all this donation will be go to straight away directly to Ukraine. People is absolutely amazing. Polish and British community have heart like that. I'm really surprised. I think so nobody expects this massive donation. Sorry, but I will be crying now. It's absolutely amazing what these people do. Everybody think about Ukraine. Everybody think about these people, what's happened, and this whole situation must be ending because it's broken my heart.
And standing next to you is Titania. You've got your daughter has just fled from Ukraine, made it to safety. Tell us about that situation.
Olesia came yesterday, so it took her 25 hours to get from my hometown in Ukraine to Warsaw, capital city of Poland, and then she flew yesterday here. In Ukraine, I have my mom, my brother, his wife, and my nephew. It's the closest people to my heart, but I have lots of cousins there, and friends. All my school colleagues are there. They are defending the country. They have this patriotic spirit that is in our blood. People here are incredibly generous. They are kind.
What does it mean to you to see people collecting, donating?
I feel really thrilled at the moment. Yes, thank you.
A desperate situation for you at the moment, but the big charities are saying they need cash donations too to prevent a humanitarian disaster.
Yeah, it's so moving to see the response out there. Well, meanwhile, another example of growing anger over Russia's actions is a statement from Everton today. The club says that it's shocked and saddened by what it calls the appalling events unfolding in Ukraine. It has confirmed that the club suspended with immediate effect all commercial sponsorship arrangements with the Russian companies USM, Megaphone and Yota.
And at Westminster today, there were extraordinary scenes of support for Ukraine. Our political correspondent, Leisha McNally, joins us live now. And, Leish, it's been a very unusual day there.
That's right, Andy. The Ukrainian ambassador was in Parliament today to hear Prime Minister's questions, and he became the focal point of a very striking moment. Now, just before we show it to you, it's worth bearing in mind that applause of any kind is completely against the rules within the House of Commons. Put simply, this is something that we've never seen before.
I want to welcome to our gallery the Ukraine ambassador.
Yeah. You're right.
So a highly unusual gesture, sanctioned by the whole House and the Speaker, who's also the MP for Chorley. He said it was a demonstration of respect and support for the people of Ukraine. Now, after that moment of real unity, there were, of course, tough questions for the government. The Prime Minister pressed to go further on sanctions, with many MPs, including from within his own party, wanting to see a more generous offer on visas. So we might see a change in policy there over the next few days. One thing that seems fixed, though, is that there can't be a no-fly zone put in place around Ukraine. Here's the Defence Minister and MP for Wyre and Preston North.
That would inevitably mean shooting down Russian jets. Russia would retaliate. That would trigger an Article 5 if it was against a NATO country, which brings all 30 members of NATO, the Americans, the Canadians, Portugal into the fight, and you would end up very quickly, potentially, with a war with Russia across Europe. And we are not prepared to do that step.
A really serious reminder there that for all we can clap and send our support to Ukraine, there's a very narrow line which parliaments all across Europe are having to tread to make sure this conflict doesn't escalate into a continent-wide war. OK, Leisha, in Westminster, thank you. And, of course, there is much more on that story still to come on the ITV News at 6:30 with Lucrezia.
We'll bring you the latest on the Ukraine war. The Russians attack key cities. The Ukrainians claim as many as 2,000 civilians have been killed so far. The sick children who fled the war being treated in field hospitals across the border in Poland. Plus, the price of oil surges as the fighting intensifies, with fresh warnings we could all be paying more at the pumps. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Well, next from us, a warning about some distressing pictures of the injuries inflicted on a 75-year-old woman who has cancer. She and her family want us to show them on the programme tonight in the hope that her attacker can be caught. Now, we're not naming the woman who was assaulted, but we can say she was targeted by a robber on her own doorstep in Stockport. Yeah, she's now in hospital with a bleed on the brain, and her daughter fears the attack on her could lead to delays in her cancer treatment. Our reporter Claire Hannah has more.
Preparing to go and visit her mum in hospital. When she saw her last night, Debbie took these photos, which her mum has bravely asked her to share after she was mugged for just £10 when she got out of a taxi in the early hours of Saturday.
She was top to toe in blood, bleeding from her eyes, bleeding from a big gash in her head, and her clothes were just absolutely sodden in blood. I didn't know where she was bleeding from, if it was her body, if she'd been stabbed or anything.
You followed the ambulance to the hospital. What was going through your mind?
I was praying on the way there that she was going to make it. I just thought she was going to die.
A horrific end to what had been a nice night out, and days on, it is still a blur.
And all she remembers is someone tugging on a bag, and then she couldn't remember anything after that. In a bag, all she had was £10, an old Nokia phone, an old-fashioned one, a bus pass. But yeah, she didn't even have hardly anything, and she probably would have given it them if they'd asked for it, because that's what she's like.
Police say her purse has been found, but her handbag is still missing, and investigations are continuing.
I just think it's disgusting that they could do that to a lady who's 75 and leave her like that, covered in blood. And, you know, if they wanted to take the bag, they could have took the bag. They didn't have to do all that to her. And to leave her like that, I mean, in the middle of the night, if she hadn't have got up the stairs or a neighbour hadn't been in, he saved her life, she wouldn't be here. I just feel so bad for her. And all the family's worried to death. We're hoping she's going to recover after this, but I think it'll take a long time.
This is Debbie's mum celebrating her birthday 2 months ago, in stark contrast to this. It's hoped these photos will now prick someone's conscience and stop whoever did this before they do it to someone else. Claire Hannah, ITV News, Stockport.
Yeah, we wish her a speedy recovery, and if you can help with that inquiry, please get in touch with the police.
Absolutely senseless attack. OK, next tonight, she was the youngest of those to die in the Manchester Arena attack. Now, the head teacher at the school where 80-year-old Safi Rose Roussos was a pupil has written a book about how they coped with her sudden death.
It gives a rare insight into how a school goes through such a dark chapter and how they cope when the spotlight moves away. Chris Upton hopes that the profits will help if they ever have to go through the same painful process. Amy Welch reports.
To everyone who knew her, Safi Rose Roussos was a star. She was 8 years old when she was killed in the Arena bombing, and for her friends, the shock they felt and the tears they shed were eased just a little by the love and support of her school.
We found out, obviously, that Safi was missing, and that was quite challenging in the first place. As the day developed, we obviously heard the sad news that she passed away and was the youngest victim of the attack. So that brings with it a lot of challenges, especially with such a young children that you're dealing with. For example, how do you tell children those types of things?
Flowers at the school gates and outside her parents' fish and chip shop in Leyland were overwhelming. But the school also struggled with media intrusion at a time when they were trying to heal. And now its head has written a book about how they coped.
Come to show you the book that I've written, which is called Searching for the Sparkle.
Searching for the Sparkle is this school's journey of recovery.
My brother was in her year, so when I was walking around, loads of people were quite upset. Her friends were really upset. It was just quite sad for everyone, really.
We set off balloons in memory of her. We came together as a school. We did assemblies. We sang because she really enjoyed singing. She loved it performing.
Just in case that happens again, we need to remember, we can all get through it together, and even though we have lost some people, we can all be okay and happy together.
Who is this book for?
I wanted to help school leaders. I think there's elements of mental health that it can help as well. I think it's a hidden side of a terror attack, and speaking of journalists like yourself, many have said to me, we've always wondered what happens when the cameras go away, and this is what this book does, and I think people will really connect with that.
Jeanette Higson taught Safi and says this is one way of ensuring her legacy lives on.
The last group of children that knew Safi left at the end of last year, but the staff's still here, and she is part of our school and she's always going to be in our hearts. So I think everything that we've done makes her part, she's part of us now, isn't she?
All proceeds from the book will go to the charity Sparkle Bean, which provides grants for schools dealing with grief. And what better way to mark a book launch than a fly past? Proof that Safi is still making people smile from the skies above. Amy Welch, ITV News, Tarleton.
Now, I've got a question for you. If you've never rowed before, why on earth would you take on a challenge to row across the Atlantic?
Yeah, while you're there, why not throw in a marathon across one of the world's toughest deserts?
Well, you might do it if you were super fit and it was all in a very good cause.
Step forward, Jamie Carr, who is lead coach for Manchester City's under-14s.
He's going to great lengths to support two charities close to his heart. One of them is City in the Community, which is teaching children how to have a healthier mindset.
Tasha Kachiri reports.
Ready to swap Manchester showers for sweltering heat in the first of two challenges of a lifetime.
The first is a running challenge in the Sahara Desert called the Marathon des Sables, which is essentially a 250k ultra marathon through the Sahara Desert. And then if that wasn't crazy enough, the second challenge is a solo Atlantic row, which is 3,000 nautical miles from the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean. When I leave the Canary Islands, I'm on my own until I get to the Caribbean. That's going to be sort of anything between 2 to 3 months on the Atlantic Ocean alone. So that's going to push me, that's going to be tough.
Jamie's raising money for children with cancer and to help Manchester City's charity support children's mental health.
Over the last 2 years, I've seen sort of the effect that COVID has had on these kids and their mental health. And essentially, we have great support at Manchester City Academy. However, children in Manchester don't always get that support.
What about we have poor mental well-being? We're not feeling too good in ourselves.
This Year 5 class are taking part in the City Thrive project. It aims to teach children about mental well-being and gives them practical ways to forge a healthy mindset.
I liked it because it was very interesting.
It was really exciting. So one, learning about her mental health, and two, with my favourite team, it's an amazing combination.
Since COVID-19, we have seen that there's lots of children struggling. So when City got in touch to say they could offer these sessions, we snapped the hands off for them because we know that our children need the support.
These sessions are being run across the city, but they need funding, and that's where Jamie comes in.
For every penny raised, that's us being able to help more young people across Manchester. The mental health and wellbeing, the issues, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. I think this is going to be for many years to come off the backlash of COVID-19. So the more we can raise, the longer we can sustain the mental health and wellbeing programme with City Thrive.
But there's just one little problem.
You've never rowed before?
No, in terms of rowing, I've never rowed before. I've still to this day not set foot in a rowing boat.
Are you not scared?
I am scared, but I'll have about 6 months to prepare myself for that. So hopefully I'll be starting to learn to row on Salford Quays in the next couple of weeks, which will be a little bit different to the Atlantic Ocean.
Jamie will start his first challenge in just under a month, with a second to follow at the end of the year. Tasha Kachiri, ITV News, Clayton.
Yeah, you better get on with those rowing lessons, hadn't you? Good luck, Jamie, in Modern City. OK, let's get the weather. Here's Joe.
That sunshine really made your eyeshadow pop, you know? And you put the wipe in the bin, not the toilet.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Go ahead, Queen.
Thank you. A very good evening to you. Bit of a damp, dreary old day today, but over the next few days things will gradually settle down weather-wise. It's going to turn colder in the run-up to the weekend, but maybe there'll be some sunshine to look forward to. Tomorrow, though, looking rather damp, it has to be said, with lots of cloud for northwest England and the Isle of Man. As we can see, things are quite mild at the moment. We've got these oranges on the temperature chart. Something slightly colder moving in as we get towards Friday and into the weekend, but high pressure establishing itself. So Saturday and Sunday should be largely dry, with maybe a bit of sunshine to look forward to. However, back to this evening. It's damp, it's cloudy, there's some hill fog in Pennine areas and up in Cumbria for the Peak District, and on and off tonight there'll be patchy rain and drizzle for most places. By the end of the night, something slightly wetter pushing in from the west into the Isle of Man. Temperature-wise tonight, we'll avoid a frost, 3 or 4 Celsius, the absolute minimum in the far east there. On to tomorrow and the sun times. It's up at 5 to 7 and setting at around 10 to 6 tomorrow evening. Tomorrow then, a cloudy start for most of us. We've got hill fog, which could cause some visibility problems on Transpennine routes initially. And then this band of rain, which slowly edges eastwards as we go through the day tomorrow, actually falling apart a little bit as it does so. So it might not even reach the Pennines, and it's certainly being kept at bay there from the east of the country. We'll hold on to that, though, for our part of the world tomorrow afternoon. So it's damp, it's drizzly. Temperatures will get to around 9 or 10 Celsius at best. At least tomorrow isn't too windy, and then things turn a little chillier through the rest of the week, but we'll begin to see it settling down as that high pressure builds in. Bye-bye.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Those eyebrows are unreal.
Thanks, Joe. Loving the yellow. That is it for this evening. Tomorrow, though, anyone with children will probably know that it is World Book Day, and we would love to see your pictures.
Oh, yes, we would. You can send them to us in all of the usual ways, and we'll try to show as many as we can on tomorrow night's programme. That's at 6 as ever. Before that, I'll be back with our next update at the later time tonight of 11:05. Until then, please do enjoy your evening.
Bye-bye.